Welcome to the program. Now let's roll up our sleeves. The Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, TUC, has issued a 10-point demand to the federal government where it states that all agreements between labor and government, including the payment of the monthly 35,000 naira wage award to public servants in local, state and federal services must be implemented until a new national minimum wage is agreed. According to the labor union, given the current state of the porous economy, Nigerians have little optimism and are still expecting to experience the renewed hope agenda of President Bola Tinubu's government. TUC's position is contained in its New Year statement issued by its President and Secretary General Festus Osifo and Nuhutoro. In the demands, the union also asks that a new national minimum wage must be negotiated and implemented, and if further delayed in the year, arrears must be paid. And for further details on the 10-point agenda presented to President Tinubu's cabinet by the TUC, I have with me in the studio the President of the Trade Union Congress, Festus Osifo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Good evening, Nigerians. Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to your esteemed viewers.
Yeah, and it looks like you're not smiling this year. Your new Year message to Nigerians, you're putting the government at alert that if some of the details of the agreement reached are not implemented, then we should all be prepared for the worst.
Yes, as you could rightly know, and as all Nigerians are equally witnessed as well, that 2023 was a year that was extremely difficult. It was a year that Nigerians passed through a lot of excruciating pains and difficulties. So having passed through that in 2023, so Trade Union Congress of Nigeria felt that 2024 should be better off. I mean, we should have a lot of hope in 2024, believing that the year had a lot in store for it. But we felt that this will not materialize unless the Nigerian government, both the federal government, the state government, and the local government, if any still exists today, should all come together to ensure that the plight of Nigerians are addressed. The issues that are confronting Nigerians on a daily basis are addressed. So it was based on that. We looked at it. What are those issues that are currently affecting Nigerians today? What are those issues that in 2023 has put Nigerians and the citizens of this our dear country in a very bad shape and in utter hardship? So looking at these issues, we looked at the issues of PMS, we looked at the issues of inflation, we looked at the issues, even how the budgetary implementations are always done. So it was based on this that we came up with this 10-point agenda, because we feel that if government is sincere enough to implement these, put framework in place to address all these, the lives of an average Nigerian would be better. How will you feel every day you are receiving seemingly static salary and you go to the market and you cannot buy anything? You could compare in 2022 what was the price of rice, but this Christmas a bag of rice was sold as high as 70,000 naira. So for somebody that is under minimum wage, how could a person, I mean, his wage could not even buy half bag of rice.
That's like a 2-month salary.
Yeah, he couldn't buy half bag of rice. So it's a problem. And I think this government must sit down, buckle its belt, and address the issues that are affecting Nigerians.
Now, Mr. Osifo, let's talk about this document. It sounded like a subtle threat. And the government will say that both of you reached an agreement, and those agreements are being implemented gradually. But I'm very much interested in one aspect of your statement. In the 10-point demand, you said that that agreement was not notarized. There was no notary public that actually signed it. And from the earlier discussions you had with the government on October 2nd, there was this decision between you and the federal government team that this agreement will be laid before a court of law so that it will be deemed an agreement reached and a court judgment. So what really happened? And why would this document not be notarized in such a way that you can use it against the government at any day?
Yes, just as you've said, I think the last point in that agreement that we reached as at then contained the fact that it will be a consent judgment. But up till now, to the best information available to us, that has not been done. So as of today, it's not been placed before the court of law for it to be adopted as a consent judgment. So that does not exist today. But even beyond that, there are some provisions in that agreement that we felt that government, they have not implemented to the latter. Take, for example, the issue of wage award of 35,000 naira. Yeah, it was paid for 1 month. Then after then, up till now, the payments are ceased. Our members working in public sector, most especially working for federal government, both those drawing money from federal appropriation and those also earning salaries from their internally generated revenues, they have not been earning this money since, I think it was just September that was paid.
Yeah.
But our inquiry, they told us that they have issues with IPPIS, the backlog in January. But these are all promises, and for us, we are tired of rhetorics. We are tired of
could
promises.
That be the reason why it wasn't notarized, why this document wasn't placed in court for it to be seen as a consent judgment?
Yes,
because the federal government, in one way, maybe wants to play the old game. I mean, it's not willing to implement all. And then are you also taking a look at it that some of the economic realities may have forced the government to actually take a step backward because we're not earning so much, and then the wage bill keeps rising?
No. If you sign an agreement and you are finding it difficult to implement, what you do normally is for you to call the other party and you sit down together. But we don't even think that is the challenge. We don't think that is a problem, because today you could see from the federation account how much they share every month. It has doubled compared to the figures that they were sharing, or the amount of money that they were sharing as at April, May. Today, they share trillions of naira. That shows that even if the value of this money has plummeted, even if the value has gone down, but the physical note is there, the volume has actually gone up. So they could actually take care of this. So it is not because they don't have enough revenue, but it is the will for them to actually do what is right. You know very well that as when this government came in, the exchange rate was somewhere around 450 naira to $1. But today, officially, it is over 900 naira, which is times 2. That has actually made the government to be earning more money. You know, today, when the budget, for example, was presented, I was telling, just a conversation I had with few colleagues, that we are just bunching trillions around, but the volume, or rather the value of
increasing.
Yes, the value of this has actually plummeted. If you check the value, for example, you convert that trillion to USD, you are going to see that it has been static for over 10 years. So the naira equivalent goes up, but the actual value when you compare to USD will plummet. Because the reason you do that is because we are import dependent economy. Literally, everything we do, we import that. All the goods we consume here in Nigeria, or majority of the goods, they are all imported. Even if you want to tie your road, the machinery that you need to tie your road, at the end of the day, you are going to also import them. So what that has done literally is that when the cost of tying a kilometer road in dollar equivalent is almost constant, but in naira it has also tripled, because you now have to multiply about 900 naira to $1 in order to get the value. So at the end of the day, we don't really get the value even when the naira sum of a budget keeps going up. The people that bear the brunt is actually the workers, because the one that is constant is what the workers earn. It's constant. But that value of money that the worker earn has actually plummeted. Because when you take it to the market, then you realize that you are holding so much naira, but the naira could buy you almost next to nothing. So for us, it is left for government to tell us the reason why they have not took that document to court. Is left for them, but for us, our responsibility is to hold them accountable, to be sure and certain that every statement in that agreement, as agreed with them, must be implemented. One of the issues is the issue of return. If you looked at it,
I mean,
there was a date to it.
Employers.
There was a date to it that this would be resolved 2 weeks after that. But as at today, you could see that it has not been resolved.
Former Minister Lalong said that the issues, in fact, that was one of the listings that will be resolved. And I'm surprised.
And talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. So anybody can come out and say anything. But for us, as at today, it has not been implemented. My shot, or the shot of the TUC to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is that in all our conversations with him, he has told us that the time of broken promises are over. That the time where agreements are signed and not implemented are over. And we hoped, as at then, that it is, he was saying it the way he feels. But he should give his lieutenant the marching order that everything in that agreement must be implemented, so that tomorrow, when we sit down to have conversations and we are negotiating a document, we will believe that the other party is going to implement it in utmost good faith. Well, but by the time you don't implement one, then you now want to negotiate another one, it becomes a problem. Because we are going to sit down with them very soon to start having conversations on the issue of minimum wage.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where I'm coming to, because one of your demands here is that the government must begin the talk on minimum wage, and if you cannot pay now, there must be plans to actually pay it in arrears once it starts. There was supposed to have been a national minimum wage committee to have been set up and all of that. What, in your own estimation, is actually holding the government back? Because, that brought a lot of goodwill for President Tinubu when he mentioned that the new minimum wage is in the works.
Yes, they actually wrote, from that agreement, we have supposed to have, the committee ought to have been inaugurated since last year. But up till now, what we received was a letter saying that we should send in our nominations. So both the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria and the Nigerian Labour Congress, we have sent in our nominations. So all we are waiting for is the date for the inauguration of a committee.
Do you already have a particular amount, a specific amount, in mind that you're taking into the negotiations if it eventually holds? Because we see some APC members are even saying that they think Labour deserves 200,000 naira.
Yes,
as minimum
so
wage.
that 200,000 naira that is being banded, that is branding around today, actually came from TUC. If you remember, sometime in August, June, July last year, when we started the issues about palliatives and issues on what to be done. So in the shopping list that we submitted, we actually stated 200,000 naira there. But in reality today, 200,000 naira today, what is really the value of that 200,000 naira even today? So for us, yes, we will sit down with the NLC. Once we are invited, we'll come up with a definite figure, because even that 200,000 naira today, can it really even take anybody home? How much today is transportation? Just as we said earlier, if a bag of rice is about 70,000 naira, you need to cook the food. You need to get other ingredients to get it done. So will a bag of rice even take a family of 4, 5, 6 for 1 month? So these are all the conversations that will go into it. And remember, please, that when the last minimum wage was negotiated, the exchange rate between dollar and naira was about 300 to 360 naira. But as of today, the exchange rate today is in the black market, because everything depends literally in the black market, because you don't see the dollar.
Yeah, even the $200,000, so 200,000 you're talking about, some people will actually tell you that it's actually $200. We're talking about.
Exactly. It's actually yes, you are very correct. It's actually $200. But again, if you even go to parallel market, it's less than $200, because the parallel market is about 1,200 plus. So by the time you check that, it's somewhere around $160 per month. So when you put that vis-a-vis, amongst the developing countries in the world, where are we? And as when the last minimum wage was negotiated, what was our inflation rate? Today, where do we stand regarding inflation? Expert has put it that between now and the middle of the year, our inflation could be getting up to 32, 33, 34%. And for us, government must act. It is not just enough for you to keep hyping the interest rate, which is the monetary policy rate. It's not just enough for you to keep doing that, because when you have an inflation that is caused by both demand pull and cost push inflation, at the end of the day, you must bring in a lot of fiscal measures. Today, people cannot go to their farms because of insecurity. Today, the roads to the farms are bad. to get goods from the farms to the cities, you have to pay high transportation costs. So when you put all this together, it's actually leading to high cost of food.
Yeah, sorry to just intervene here. It actually brings me to one of your demands. You're saying that the price of fuel should be reduced from 617 naira per litre and be brought downwards. But you and I know that we're buying fuel for 660 naira per litre. I mean, that's where you can see it. In some states, it's as much as 700 or 700 and something plus. How realistic is that demand?
Yes, for us, part of the thought that went into that is that government should be serious in getting the refineries done. Because for us, we strongly believe that today, yes, the Dangote refinery coming on stream, with government having 20% stake in the Dangote refinery, and also putting more effort, because the Port Harcourt refinery, the old Port Harcourt refinery, the 65,000 barrels Port Harcourt refinery, it's up, and I mean, they said the mechanical completion has been done, but we have not seen production. And they have also assured that by January, February, that the production will start. But 65,000 barrels, is the installed capacity. So by the time you look at the utilization capacity, it may come down to about 50,000 barrels. But our major interest is the bigger Port Harcourt refinery, the newer Port Harcourt refinery, as well as the Warri refineries. If they can bring this on stream in 2024, we can eliminate some of the inefficiencies that are brought to bear by the import of PMS
and from that abroad. Will reduce the price of petrol below 617?
Exactly. If it's dependent on something. If the exchange rate is where it is today, or it's come down considerably, because the devil in it is not even deregulation per se. You know that if the regulation was done and the exchange rate was fixed at about 450 naira, what could have happened at the end of the day is that PMS today would have been selling below 300 naira. So the greatest devil in it is because when the regulation was done, then we allowed the massive devaluation that happened. First time in Nigeria history.
Which is what you're warning the government about.
When you combine both of them together, that is why we are where we are today. So if the exchange rate can be managed, every country in the world does not leave their exchange rate to run away the way we have left ours to run.
Aren't you saying the government's effort working, because it's already sought for a $3 billion loan from Afrexim Bank, and it's already got a tranche of it, and we hear those monies will keep coming on, and when we have that $3 billion US, it could help to actually reduce the effects that we have on the depreciating currency that we have. Do you think that the government is in the right step, considering that, the monies we are also owing is in the excess of several billions of dollars too?
So that is a real challenge on its own. That's a real challenge on its own. The question we have asked was that what was the fundamentals that kept our exchange rate as at then in about 450 and kept the parallel market at about 600? What was the fundamentals? So what shifted that now made the parallel market today to run to about 1,200 plus? What shifted? So I feel that the government just allowed this to happen in order to satisfy the yearnings of IMF and World Bank, so that they will have access to some of these loans, because some of the condition precedent from IMF and World Bank was that they should allow this currency to float. To float to what extent? To a parallel market that operates without fundamentals. When someone that have like $50-60 million who call himself a parallel market speculator tomorrow fixes a price without fundamental, because there is a willing buyer. You cannot manage your external reserve and your exchange rate and FX policies based on that. If you went back, you recall that JP Morgan Chase, as well as Bank of America, they said the true value of our naira is somewhere between 600 and 650 naira. Yeah. This was done based on scientific research. So why did we allow us to have floated this way? Yes, government has gone again to borrow money. The fear that we've always had is that this money that we keep borrowing, if you look at this year's budget, look at how much we are using to service debt vis-a-vis the revenue that we are generating as a country at a time. If we continue this way, between now and the next year or two, we would be using more money to service our debt compared to the revenue that we are making. So government should sit up to ensure, because we believe strongly that Nigeria is not a country that should be celebrating 18 trillion naira revenue. By the time you put it in dollars, it's about $18 billion revenue. Nigeria as a country, that is really small. Go and look at how much is being generated in South Africa, how much is being generated in Egypt, not to talk about some states in United States of America.
All right.
So invariably for us, we think that government must put on its thinking cap. Government must think about the people. You must bring policies and programs that will ameliorate the current suffering of the people, that will bring down inflation. You must use both your fiscal means and your monetary policy means to ensure that all these are achieved. Because the Nigerian workers have high hopes.
I'm afraid we don't have enough time. But to try to round off this conversation, I want to ask you, is the NLC with you? Because we've seen instances where both labor centers actually bicker on certain issues. I want to know if the NLC is with the TUC on this 10-point demand given to the Nigerian government.
Yes, I mean, NLC and TUC are always together when it comes to the plight and the interest of workers. But like as we have said, you know, at times we could have different strategies. We could have, like, as I've said in several fora, that we have a toolbox. That within the toolbox at times, you may decide to use your plier, the next one may decide to use the spanner, but the aim is actually the same. We drive in the same direction. And even after that, you saw, you know, before the end of last year, when all of us came together to drive a given goal. I could tell you that NLC and TUC, we are 100% in sync. We are 100% together as far as the interest of the Nigerian workers and the downtrodden masses is being put on trial.
Yeah, and you were also sounding very political in your statement by saying that the renewed hope it's not being felt by Nigerians and all of that. Wouldn't you be accused by the government of wanting to get into political terrain? Because it was, on what basis did you get to find out if the renewed hope mandate is being felt accurately by Nigerians or not? Do you have a political barometer you used?
Let me ask you, did you feel the effect of a new hope from May last year till December? The answer clearly would be a no. I know you wouldn't want to answer. So invariably, what has happened is that the promises of a better life, I mean, the promises of a better Nigerian, the promises of coming to alleviate the sufferings of Nigerians, did we feel it between May last year to December? The answer clearly is a no. So if these were what we were told, that we are coming to wipe your tears, we are coming to make lives better for you, then all we now saw was that life now became a bit unbearable. It became much more difficult. The cost of living now went up. The purchasing power of what our members earn was eroded. Things went south. So for us, we don't dabble into politics, but clearly what we talk about are the things that affect our members. So when the political class promised that they want to do X, Y, Z, and those things are not being done, it's our responsibility as labor centers to call them to order and to push them to do exactly what is right.
Okay, and do you think that President Tinubu needs to sit up more, especially with all the alleged sleaze that we're saying? It looks like those in government are living in a separate world different from that of the citizens. Political actors, what would you tell them right now, just before you sit down on the table with them again? What should they be doing?
Yes, in fact, you have said it. Today, we have had the scandal that is happening in the social investment funds, the scandal that is happening in some of the ministries. It is mind-boggling and it is mind-blowing. That is why we have advocated over the years that the way you curb corruption is not to wait for this kind of things from happening, but is putting systems in place. Is developing programs and systems to insulate. You know, I mean, how can you just transfer some of money or intend to transfer some money into an individual account? How do you account for it? What will be the audit trail? Why is it that that money cannot get to those people because they promised us? You know, we said from the beginning, when the subsidy was removed, and as they said they wanted to share 800 million naira, dollars to Nigerians. Yes. If you remember clearly, Labour kicked. Why did we kick? We said that the one that was done by the Osinbajo Osinbajo-led initiative as approved by the then President Muhammadu Buhari, that today there is no audit trail. You cannot go to market in the 21st century, in 2023, 2024, and you start sharing money to people. So if you share to 5 people and you come and say that you have shared to 10,000 people, how do we verify it? You don't do that. So what President Muhammadu Buhari must do, which I read some things today that the coordinating Minister of Economy should look at the processes. I think that is the first thing that must be done. And that was the demand.
Do you have faith in that investigation? Earlier. Do you have faith in that investigation being led by the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister?
No, I think the Minister of Finance is to say, I mean, the panel was set up for to look at the processes and put up a process in place to prevent this. But the EFCC is to take a lead in the investigation. We don't have any option than to have to believe that they mean what they say, but we will wait for the outcome of the investigation. But it is totally wrong for Nigerians to be suffering and passing through these excruciating pains, and you'll be reading all these in the news.
Well, it could actually be depressing. We must thank you so much, Festus Osifo. He is the president of the Trade Union Congress, and of course, it's one of the major labor centers in Nigeria. You've helped us to shed light on what is really happening. And of course, when people who earn minimum wage of 30,000 hear of I mean, several millions being used as sleaze. Absolutely. Of course, they wouldn't sleep fine, but we must thank you so much. And we just hope that when you get on the negotiating table with the government, they will be listening to these 10-point demands you've raised.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Festus.